To the early years. We're picking it up with Angela and Thomas Trezza, married over 50 years.
62.
62 years. That's amazing. And
we kept company 3 years.
we haven't gotten to that point with keeping company. We're going to get to that. But before going to a story about you and our Uncle Butch at Mayapack, I want to go back to Thomas Trezza, and actually you too, to ask about how you felt while you were growing up. I mean, obviously these were tough times. You talked about how difficult your times were. You talked about how big a family you had and how everybody had to work. Did you think that you were in rough times while you were growing up? I mean, what were you thinking while you were growing up? Were you thinking?
Nothing. My mother had she made us happy.
How?
Well, she was always there, and when she made food, she made it tempting for us. We used to have this thing like oatmeal, it's called blend or something, and she would make sauce on it because we had to live. This is before she met my father. And she did homework, and we used to sit around the table helping her. She used to make punch cards, and we used to help her with the sewing. She used to make these little pillows to go on a blanket. And then when she went to work for a licorice store, she used to extend us to the home. They used to feed us. She'd pick us up at 4, take us home, make a little something. And that was the life. But we always had like a happy thing. We sat together. She told us stories and whatever she did. Then when my father came into the life, we did live a little better because there was always meat then on the table. And as bad as he was, he made sure there was no cursing in the house. We never knew what he really did, but we never had to do without anything. Then Butch was born, and life was good, but he used to go out, never come home with my mother because he was married with 2 kids when he met my mother. They didn't get married until 2 years before he died. When his first wife died, then he married my mother down Florida. No, that's the truth. It was the truth. But he never allowed, my uncles used to come in, curse. Out he used to send them in. He wasn't a Holy Mary, my stepfather. But and the boys had to eat with their shirts on. You know, like some boys would wear like their undershirt, go in, put your shirt on in front of the daughters. I mean, that he did. He never cursed or anything, but he used to hit my mother, on the slide.
What about friends? Did you have friends?
Oh, yeah.
In your
Poor
neighborhood?
friends. We lived in the house, friends all up and down the block. All up the block. And whatever we got for Christmas was one thing. If you wanted skates, you got a pair of skates. But that had to last you a lifetime. When your wheels went out, we have to get them renewed. You buy another wheel. And one thing you got, but mostly clothes. A new dress. And then our uncles used to give us a quarter for Christmas, and that was like big when you got a quarter. Used to run and get maybe broken crackers, a bag full for a nickel, and that was our treat. But we managed.
Now, what about you and Uncle Butch at Mayapack?
Mayapack was the
greatest.
Greatest. My mother used to ship us off to my grandmother and grandfather. They spoke only broken English. They didn't speak fully English. And Butch and I, any summer, that's where we were shipped. In the winter, any vacations up there. And they had an Indian reservation right down the road, maybe like a block down. They had teepees and all. They used to put on a show on Saturday night with all the Indians dancing and people coming watched. And we played with the Indian kids for many, many years until they started to build up with homes. And then the Mohawk Indians left because they were pushed out. And we had good times with them. Yeah, we used to have bonfires. We used to sit in the teepee.
You went to the TV?
Yeah, they had the teepees and the fires, and then they put on a show on weekends, you know, like when tourists came. It was a big, beautiful place. I'll show you the places. I got pictures of Mayapack.
Now,
Friday night, my grandfather used to go on the lawn with a coffee can, a searchlight, get all the creepy crawlers, wake me and Butch up at 4:30, 5 o'clock, take us down to the boat. Him and I, we were only kids. Dark, going over in the water over to this island where we would get the bass and the sunfish. So when we had like about 2 dozen or 3 dozen fish, we had to go home maybe 8 in the morning. He'd make us eggs and stuff, and he would do the fish. And that was our Friday night dinner.
so Mr. Trezza, from the age of 17 up until
16.
Okay, you've given us your story up to age 16. Anything occur in your life up until the age of 17?
Well, at the age of 16, when I left school, and
So you left school
my
at
first-
16 too?
I left at 16, and I figured what's the sense of going to school? I was getting nothing out of it. And my first job, my friend Emmanuel Lala, who became a war hero, and he was in the Army, he was in the infantry. And he got me a job over in New York at 26 Whitehall Street called McClung and Company. And we were delivering printing matters just in the general area down on Whitehall Street. My pay was $15 a week. And had to take the train and the bus, but we got there and got the job. During that time, my father told me that my cousin, Jim DeVita, who had a bootblack stand at the Long Island Depot, and he said there was a job opening at the counter, and it was the Union News Company. And I went over there and knew nothing about the counter. But a beautiful man who was his name was Johnny Malice. Johnny Malice, the only reason he didn't go into the service was because he was married and he had a set of twins. And he was a Greek fella, tall, handsome guy. And he says to Jimmy, he said, "Don't worry, Jimmy, I'll take care of Tom." Now, believe it or not, only 16 years old, and they served beer there on the, what do they call that? Not bottle beer, but tap beer. And here I was serving beer, coffee, sodas, and all the soldiers and sailors, everybody getting on the trains and going to and from. And that was my 16th year. By 17, I was contemplating on going into the service. And then when I went away, I went up to Sampson, New York. That was a terrible day that I left because the house was getting smaller and smaller. All my friends were away, and I went up to Sampson, New York, and I did 5 weeks of boot camp. Came home for 5 days. The next thing I knew, I was back home for 5 days, and then I went back to Sampson, New York, got on a train, and they took us out to California. Assigned us to a ship, and they just wanted to go through some routine maneuvers. And one of them was jumping off the ship, which I did. And I was really scared, but you didn't have time to be scared. But they wanted you just to see if you jumped off the ship that you were good enough to swim to the rowboat. But before I knew it, the following day, they shipped us all down to San Diego repair base. And I went down there, and here I applied for cook and baker school, and they put me into shore patrol. It was a fairly easy job, nice fellas, beautiful weather. Had great times in not San Diego so much, but up in LA. And I had a good Navy life. I had a safe Navy life. And I spent a little over 2.5 years in the Navy. And I was the last one to come home August 26, 1946.
And you're how old at this point?
At this point, I'm 21.
Okay, before we go to the next stage of your lives, which is probably about the time that you met your partner in life, looking back on your life, any regrets that you've got
No.
from growing up?
No, we had a good life.
Are there any activities that you did growing up that we don't know about? Were you
Well,
in any
when
sport?
the war came on, oh yes, sports I was good. I played ball in school. I was
What
a
kind of
pitcher.
ball?
Baseball. I was a pitcher. I was a lifeguard, and I was a swimmer in girls' commercial. I used to go in extra just to help out, just watch the girls jump, and then I had to go in and save them. Yeah, no, this is true.
This is why you're such a good swimmer.
Yeah, and I wanted to play tennis, but my mother couldn't afford a racket for me. So I took up baseball. And we used to have, did you ever see the girls of summer?
Yeah.
That's how we used to have to wear that. And then I played ball for 6 years in my company. I represented them. I was a pitcher. We used to go play on Riverside Drive against all the other insurance companies. And we all had our uniforms, our bats, and they used to have our bus taking us there.
Wow.
Yeah, that's the truth.
For 6 years?
Yeah, I played ball. I was like in those days, you know, those girls that played.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You know, there's something that I
That's
think
why
is
I'm a good
worthwhile to
golfer.
have on here
because I got that.
is when I was a kid, and you asked the question before about did we know we were poor? Nobody knew they
No.
were poor because everybody was in the same boat. All of us
Yeah, we
played
lived in a
all
poor
kinds of
neighborhood.
sports. And one thing that I liked very, very much as a kid of 7 years old,
Best skater.
I became a boxer. I loved to box. And this is a very interesting story. At the age of 9, I went to Madison Square Garden in a tournament that we had. And I was fighting, and it was just kid stuff. And there was a lot of celebrities there that made donations to the Boys Club of America. And I was fighting, and during the fight, my pants fell down. And the referee was a woman referee who came from California. She was a wealthy woman. And she sent me the following week a dozen pair of elastic pants. That was supposed to be a joke, you know, but I fought up until my Navy days,
Wow.
just amateur. And I enjoyed it. Was I good at it? I was good enough to survive. We went to various clubs, boxing clubs to fight. There was no money involved. It was just for your own personal enjoyment. But I was very devoted. I ran the Manhattan Bridge, I would say in my lifetime, at least 100 times. I used to do that for exercise before going to school in the morning. So when you ask a question, did we know we were poor? We just knew we all had a job to do. And there's probably so much more to our lives together, you know, not only together and before, that you just forget unless you had all of this written down, and probably it would be just a little too long and too maybe boring after a while that you hear too much of it. But I loved my family very much, and I can honestly and truly tell you that my wife and I, before we got married, we made an agreement not to have any arguments pertaining to brothers and sisters or mothers and fathers,
And in front
regardless
of children.
how we felt. Did we have our share of arguments? And the answer is yes, but I think that's what makes a healthy, a stable marriage.
Okay, we're going to get to how both you met, but before we leave this portion of your life, if I ask you quickly to just tell us, was there one person more than anyone that shaped your life or influenced you up until this point?
My Uncle John.
Your Uncle John.
Yeah.
All right, and we'll find out a little bit more about your Uncle John
In my life,
in your life.
my sister Martha was my hero. She was like a mother. And my Uncle Jimmy was like my father.
Okay, we're going to pick this up in
All
one
right.
minute.